honestly, when you said policing in the 50s, I picture a police officer getting out, strolling down the sidewalk, getting a donut or something, and just like whistling and in a nice little Leave It to Beaver kind of like white neighborhood. Like that's my memory.
And your experience is totally different than mine.
Right. Yeah.
Because my experience is the 60s and the civil rights movement and dogs being put on people and water hoses being turned on people. Officer Louis Arnold, Cincinnati Police Department, Faith-Based Community Liaison Officer.
I'm Thomas Hargis. I'm pastor of Jubilee United Methodist Church, and I run the Jubilee Project.
My name is Ian Strickland. I'm the pastor of Over the Rhine Community Church in Over the Rhine, and where we are here today.
If you poll the African American community, you'll probably get a totally different perspective on policing as if you polled, say, Hyde Park or Oakley.
There is a very negative view that probation is not helpful, and that probation is more of a binder, and a systematic frustration sometimes gets taken out on a father whose job is to patrol the community and keep it safe.
You know, you can look at it from two different vantage points. So say you have an officer that's going through a really hard divorce, and then he comes to work. He can very easily take it out on the citizens. Or you have a citizen who may have struggled in trying to find employment, trying to provide for his family.
That power then requires folks to, I suppose, act at a higher level than the ordinary citizen. You know, like an officer with a bad day can result in something far different than me with a bad day. Growing up in this country, we've sort of inherited these internal biases. Systemic racism plays a big part.
Yes, just as it is a mistake to take a broad brush and say all police officers are bad, it's just as bad a mistake to take a broad brush and go into a community and say that entire community is bad. I go back to what the chief of the International Association of Police Chiefs said, and he apologized for the mistreatment of people of color and poor people of past actions of the police department. That was, I don't know if this country really understands how profound that apology was, because he understood the effect, and so now that healing can start.
When I hear you talk, I hear scripture over and over.
Which one is that?
When I read, especially the Old Testament, is remember. Yeah. Do you remember when?
Oh,
do you remember?
Yeah.
We're always telling the story of God and the story of God and God's people. And I think as a country, I don't think we want to look at some of the worst parts of our history. But I think when we choose not to remember, I think we're also doing God a disservice, because we are forgetting that God was in the midst of all that as well.
Yes.
When we talk about racial reconciliation, we think racial reconciliation, like going back to a place where race was ever conciled, where it was ever good. Some things we talk about around here is actually racial conciliation. Like, and this is all what Jesus was about, right? It's about transformation into a reality that has not existed yet. And you're talking about remembrance. And when I hear that word, I immediately go to the table. You know, the Eucharist.
Do this,
Do this in remembrance of me.
We want to live into something that leads to perfection. And the only place that I know that exists is some place where Jesus is currently inhabiting. Yeah. And that I have to reconcile myself with God and be in the presence of God to know where I'm going. And I think you're right. I think the church has to be more involved, because I think we have a unique song to sing as we're journeying through this desert, trying to find what that promised land actually looks like.
When you read Scripture is all about righteousness, and if we're about righteousness, then we're going to stand for righteousness. And when we see injustice, we should be standing up.
The church really has to work on its own internal conflict if we're going to try to get out into the world. The church doesn't do well with its own internal conflicts most of the time.
What are you talking about? Like we pick carpet color in no
carpet color, no time, right? 5 committee meetings. So I really believe that if we're good at dealing with our internal conflicts, then we become the light of Christ, because we are pastors of police officers, and we are pastors of those who are incarcerated.
As a white person, I am harmed by racism because it is not good for me to benefit on the backs of my sisters and brothers who are not white.
My community suffers, even if they're not in our pew on Sundays. Our community suffers. That everything really should play in all of the mindset of creation, and it does. We just don't. I don't think we do a good job of recognizing it.
But when you have an event, invite police officers. So citizens can begin to see, unless you live next door to a police officer or a police officer is in your family, that's just kind of this wall that's there. It's me and then it's the police. And there's this wall that separates us because I look at him as pure authority. But if you begin to talk to police officers, begin to know who they are, find out they have children, they have grandchildren, they have struggles, and then you begin to see that human side. You still understand the authority that they carry, but you can see that human side. And I think that would be good for community.
Maybe it's we invite officers out to an event and some come not in uniform, so that people can actually encounter folks as a human first.
And I volunteer at my old high school coaching track. I'm an assistant coach there. And what I did in both instances, I spent 3 weeks, sometimes a month with these kids before they ever saw me in uniform. Coach, I didn't know you were the police. But that relationship had already been developed.
Yeah.
So they saw me as coach before they saw me as a police officer.
I didn't know you were the police. Identifying a group as if this group all thinks and acts the same way. The Latinos, the African Americans, the police. And it's not the police. It is police officers, men, women, children of parents themselves.
Just like if I were to walk up to someone and immediately say, I'm a pastor, I would be the church, with all that baggage. Right? And it's up to us to display a different narrative, not just defend ourselves or say, well, I'm this, this, and this, but actually to do that long road, that really deep work of actually demonstrating that